Welcome to another ABS online video. Let's go and find out what we're going to learn today. Move on in week 25. An historic nation again. We've looked at some other historic nations. Where to this time? We will split our history in two again. We have seen that many histories of many countries can be divided into when people arrived and when the Europeans arrived. European explorers did a lot of good, but also a lot of bad. So, do we like them? No, I don't know. So where to this time? This week it's Australia. So our history. It's split in two because just like America, people arrived long ago. But the Europeans arrived quite recently. Our grammar is perfect. Really? I think even I make mistakes sometimes in grammar. Hold on, let's explain. This time we will use past perfect. We use it for something that started in the past and continued up to a time in the past. That's not really very clear, is it? So it started in the past and it finished in the past. Okay. Yeah, we need some examples. Man had used the land bridge for 10,000 years before it was flooded. Another example. They had travelled south for over a year. So they're two good sentences using past perfect. So it's not too difficult. We have the subject, followed by had, and then the past participle. Okay. One more example. Now that we know this. I had lived. So there we've got subject, had, and past participle. I had lived here for 6 years before my first visit to the stadium. I had lived. Okay. And with past perfect, we need a time as well. So here we've got 6 years. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Man had lived. Okay, we've got another sentence there that's past perfect. Subject, had, past participle. Man had lived in southern Asia for hundreds of thousands of years before looking to Australia. They first crossed somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 years ago. Now that's a really long time, isn't it? And no one is really sure when man first went into Australia. There are some things we know though. They could not walk there. Now this is vital. It really is very, very important to know. There was no complete land bridge. So they had to use some form of boat Now that sounds okay, but this means they were some of the earliest sea-going people. This is a bit incredible because they had to try and make a boat, something that no one had seen before. They then had to try and make the boat go in the right direction. They then had to be brave enough to get on the boat and go right out into the sea. That's amazing. So where did they go? They had settled along the north coast, but did start exploring this vast new land. By 47,000 years ago, the southwest was settled, and the southeast 39,000 years ago. So, in man's very, very, very long history, these periods are quite close together. So, they were brave explorers going all over this new, vast land. An advanced society? Remains found in New South Wales show signs of cremation. Now, remains mean remains of people, dead people. Cremation is burning a dead body. This suggests some form of religious ceremony, perhaps the oldest in the world. So these people may have been the first ever sailors, and they may have been the first people to use religion. So advanced in other ways. Art. People had drawn simple lines and spirals on cave walls since shortly after arriving. However, 35,000 years ago, much more advanced art, including men and animals, appeared. Again, some of the oldest in the world. Let's look at that first sentence again. Past perfect. People had drawn. Subject had past participle. Then it all changed. These Aboriginal peoples had experienced no outside influence right up until just 400 years ago. Then I'm sure you can guess who arrived. So they had been completely alone for maybe 50,000 years. And then Wilhelm Janszoon was the first European to set foot on mainland Australia in 1606. The north, that's where he went. For 40 years, Dutch and Spanish ships mapped the northern coast. It was so big, it was taking a very long time. Explorers had not completed mapping the north when Abel Tasman ventured south in 1642. Even then, they had no idea how large this new land was. Colonization. This is what Europeans did all over the world. Not until James Cook in 1770 did the East see Europeans? Shortly after this, colonisation began. So this is only 250 years ago. Just 250 years ago, really, there were no houses or roads or anything at all. The first settlement. This is a bit unusual. I think it's unique in the world. Let's find out. The British had seen just a little of the land before deciding in 1776 to establish a colony in Botany Bay. Botany Bay is still a very, very popular place to visit. Try and find it on a map. Botany Bay is in what is now the heart of Sydney. Most people would say that Sydney is the most important city in Australia. And Botany Bay is still there. It's still beautiful and very easy to visit. But why settle there? The British decided that it would be a great place for a penal colony. That is an open prison. A prison. 200 prisoners were sent there to live alone, and they cost the British government nothing. Throughout history, putting someone in prison, well, that cost money. Someone had to pay. But now, the British, well, they just sent you all the way around the world and left you there. What about elsewhere? The colonies were expanding. By 1788, New South Wales had been set up with 1,000 people, of which 788 were prisoners. New South Wales is the large area around what is now Sydney. But this is quite quick, just 20 years. And we had a large colony. But we had mostly prisoners, but not all prisoners. I wonder how those other people felt. Because there's 1,000 people, 788 are prisoners. So that means only just over 200 are not prisoners. Oh, and don't forget, it's an open prison. No one was locked up. That must have been a really weird situation to be in, especially because you were so far from home. Real success. Before 1804, Australia had become self-sufficient in grain. Now that's amazing. So very, very quickly, these people could grow enough food. They didn't need any help from outside. They were self-sufficient. Even today, most countries in the world are not self-sufficient. They need lots of help from many other places. Whaling was also developed into a vital trade. Whaling is the catching and killing of whales. Now these giant animals are full of oil. Now not oil for your car, but oil and fat that could be used for lighting. And many other things were very, very useful in the whale. Bit difficult to catch one. That's why it was a really big trade and it made lots of money. Hooray! Now there was steady growth as well. Between 1820 and 1840, 60,000 convicts arrived. They were joined by an equal number of free settlers. Many has worked as farmers back home, so established cattle farms. Don't forget, Australia is huge, so lots of space to keep your cattle. So we had 60,000 convicts, that's another word for prisoner, and 60,000 free people that just wanted to go and live there. It was expanding, always growing. In 1826, Western Australia was claimed as a British territory. This had ensured that France could not easily set up their own colony. The British wanted it all. Now, women. This is a very, very difficult place to live. So, not many women wanted to go there. Since the first settlers arrived, women had made up just 15% of the population. So, everyone knew that this small number of women were really important to the growth and stability of this new colony. They were therefore seen as being very important and given more rights. Women in Australia had more rights than women in America or Britain. What about the Aboriginal people? These are the first people that settled there. As we said before, they had been there for 50, maybe 70,000 years. Well, in contrast to this, the impact on the Aboriginal people had caused terrible problems. Smallpox had wiped out 50% of the population around Sydney. Smallpox is a terrible disease, and almost everyone that gets smallpox dies. They were pushed out as well. As the number of settlers increased, the Aboriginal people were forced off their ancestral land. Again, they had been living there for such a long time. But the Europeans came along and the Aboriginal people moved out. All too often, they were violently removed. Prosperity. The settler population had increased throughout the years. Cities grew, as did people's wealth. In 1890, the average income in Australia was 50% higher than in America. Wow! That made them really rich. What about independence? Still a British colony. By the start of the 20th century, Most people had been born in Australia and wanted to be independent of Britain. They didn't see themselves as being British, not in any way. The Commonwealth. In 1901, Australia became a Commonwealth nation and had its own elected government. The Commonwealth is a big group of countries that used to be part of the British Empire. So we're sort of still friends, and we still get together and have meetings and try and help each other. But there's a lot of independence. The wars. Despite being so far away from Europe, Australian soldiers fought bravely in both World War I and II. Now, Australia itself was never affected by either of these wars. But these men were just there because they thought they were doing the right thing. They were standing up and fighting for what they thought was right. That is a very brave thing to do. What about between the wars? The interwar years were very difficult. Australia had relied heavily on exports for many years, and now other countries could not afford them. Most countries had been really affected badly by the wars, and there was not very much money for people to spend on exports from other countries. What about today? Right, well, it's been another long history, hasn't it, with many changes. Immigration has continued. Australia today is one of the most culturally diverse nations on earth. There are people of every colour, every religion, every nationality, all living together and mostly happily. I think Australia is one of the happiest countries in the world. It's a great place to visit. So where next? Right. Well, let's see. China, America, Australia. Where next? We have one more historic nation to look at. Where do you want to go? Well, we've seen China, we have seen America, and today Australia. One more place. Where do you think it should be? Well, you come back very soon and we'll tell you. See you soon, guys. Bye. Thank you for watching our video today. Please don't forget, subscribe, and that will help us to make lots more videos for you. Thank you. Bye.